Um, First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Danielle, and I am the youth minister at St. Francis Xavier Parish. I have not always been the youth minister. I actually worked at the diocese right across the street for about a year in young adult evangelization and marriage initiatives. It's a big fancy title we were trying, to get young adults back into their faith, back into a personal relationship with Jesus. And we were working on ways to promote and encourage the wonderful sacrament of marriage. I have since then taken the job as a youth minister. And let me tell you, I'm amazed by all of you because, I was in high school. I graduated high school pretty soon, about 10 years ago. And we went through a lot in high school, but not nearly what you guys go through today. And I'm just seeing it. I have some nieces that are in high school, and the things we talk about and the issues that come up, they're so much more complex. And these terms that I wouldn't have even known what that was when I was in high school. So you guys are in a very different world than I was, and it makes it really hard. There's also an opportunity to witness to Jesus and be a light to people. So I'll tell you this, when I was first asked to give a talk at the Congreso, I was laughing, first of all, because my Spanish, it's no bueno. It's really, really bad. I can understand it, but I can't speak it very well. And one of the priest at my parish, Father George, he is an amazing Spanish speaker. So we've been having lessons in the morning, but I still can't roll my R's. So I think I'm gonna have to do a summer immersion trip in Mexico. I'm just gonna have to live, and I'm gonna have to just speak it to really learn it. So I was laughing when they asked me to give this talk, because I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna give a talk on having a relationship with God. Heck yeah, my favorite topic. But then I realized it was on this thing called the Latin X. And honestly, I had no idea what that was at first. I was like, does it have to do with the Latin? I don't speak Latin. I didn't take Latin. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out what it is. And Carmen Portela sends me an email. And she's like, this is what the Latin X is. So we're going to get into all of that. But I want to just say this. Given the topic, it can be somewhat hard sometimes to have a white Anglo person give this talk, and I'm going to be really aware of that as I move forward. Just realizing that the Latin culture is so vast and so wide, and I don't have a comprehensive understanding of all of it. So I just want to say that to you guys. Okay, so do you guys listen to podcasts? Does anyone listen to podcasts? Yeah, okay, it's funny because I find that the younger group doesn't listen to podcasts. I don't know, the 25 plus group does, but the younger are no, I don't listen to podcasts. Well, if you do, or you're interested in listening to podcasts, I have a little podcast with the diocese. It's called I Got Issues. Because I got serious issues. And so we talk about the issues, and we will cover everything. And one of the things I had told Carmen that I would do is that if there were questions after this talk that you would like to remain anonymous, you will have an opportunity to submit questions to me, and we will review those and talk about them on an upcoming episode of I Got Issues. So if there's something that you don't really feel comfortable asking in person, but you really have a genuine question about, we'll give you the opportunity to send those questions in. So just wanted to let you guys know that. So let me get to okay. So along with being a youth minister, I actually, my first profession is I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've only been in the profession a couple years. I'm still pretty fresh out of graduate school. But I went into marriage and family therapy because I love working with people and I love helping people. And you never want to know that people are really hurting and suffering and that they're in pain, but it really is a wonderful joy to be with people in the hardest parts of their life. If they're struggling with anxiety, depression, I deal with a lot of couples that are in hard marriages, and it has always been such a blessing to me to be a part of that. So I always joke my two loves are youth ministry and therapy. So I love Jesus and mental health, so I kind of combined both to make my perfect job over at St. Francis. So the topic of the talk I was asked to give is, what is the X in Latinx? And as I said, to be honest, I had no idea what it meant until I did some research. I want to know, is anyone familiar with Latinx? Raise your hand if you're familiar with Latinx. If I say that, you're like, I know what that is. Okay, good. Okay, I feel kind of better then, that like everyone's looking at me. Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, I feel better about this. So to be honest, I had no idea what it meant. And then I texted one of my core members who's a Spanish teacher, and I was like, Chris, tell me what this is. And he like gives me this whole explanation, and I was like, oh, that's what, oh yeah, I know that. But it took me a little bit of time to learn. So, if you're not familiar, I'm gonna have Steph backstage cue up the video, and we're gonna give you an explanation. So we'll wait for that.
Yo, dude, check out this article. 10 annoying things all Latinx do.
What the heck is Latinx?
It's the gender-inclusive alternative to Latino and Latina.
Isn't that what Latino's for? Why they gotta go and ruin the Spanish language for it? It's so complicated to say.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! The only thing that's complicated around here is that outfit. This is the cat call, and I'm calling this shit out. 2 main reasons why Latinx is used. 1, to dismantle the patriarchy. The Spanish language is gendered. Almost all of our words are male or female, like amigas or amigos. But we use the male term as a universal term for everyone. So for example, if there's a room full of 3 women, we'd say, I'm with mis amigas. But the minute one man enters, it becomes, I'm with mis amigos. The X in Latinx is an effort of pushing against the masculine term dictating our language. Using terms like policeman or mankind subconsciously tell women and girls that they aren't included, limiting the possibilities they create for themselves or telling them that they're inferior to men. So Latinx replacing the universal Latino is like using police officer instead of policeman, or saying Times Person of the Year instead of Man of the Year. Although not everyone's down for gender inclusive terms.
Who'd rather have it the Man of the Year? Look, the women are all...
Number 2, to break down the gender binary. We've learned growing up that there are 2 genders, men and women. But what if you don't fit in either, or you fit both?
Like me. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a trans, gender non-conforming person, and I identify as Latinx. Latina and Latina don't fit me. I float somewhere in the middle, so I use they and them pronouns instead of he or she. My grandmother raised her children to not care about gender or allow gender to limit us. There was no such thing as girls do this or boys do that. I get that not everyone was raised like that, so this can be really confusing and complicated. And I understand your discomfort because even I had trouble switching my own pronouns. Using Latinx may feel strange at first, but know as a trans and gender non-conforming person, it makes me feel accepted and acknowledged.
Alright, but it's still not a real word. Latinx is ruining the Spanish language.
Is there really integrity in a language forced on people by colonizers? Besides, today's Spanish isn't the Castilian Spanish that was spoken years ago. It's a mixture of Arabic, Indigenous, and West African words. Language is ever evolving, but yet you mad at just one word, huh?
Alright, but do I have to refer to myself as Latinx?
No, of course not. The objective is to be inclusive, and including more people doesn't erase your identity. Your gender is important to you the same way that it's important to trans and gender non-conforming people. I get it, we added another term to the sancocho that is us, and it complicates stuff a bit. But hey, we're complex people, and addressing those complications is a good thing.
Complicated and beautiful, just like my man's outfit.
Any of you hungry? I can go for some sancocho right now.
Yeah, I'm hungry, but let me go home and change first.
Yeah, thank God to go. Oh, and no more fur.
So, are you pro-Latinx, anti-Latinx? Still a little confused? Let me know in the comments.
So, does that help a little bit to kind of show you what we're talking about? What we're basically talking about here, guys, is Latinx is a gender-neutral alternative to Latino, Latina, and it's used by scholars, activists, and an increasing number of journalists. Latinx is quickly gaining popularity among the general public and population, and it's part of a linguistic revolution that aims to move beyond gender. Latinx is supposed to make room for people who consider themselves transgender, queer, agender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, or gender fluid. Okay, so the Latinx movement comes out of the desire to not give the traditional gender to something. So we're either created male or female. And the Latinx movement is saying, well, some people might not think they're a male or a female, and it's a movement to be inclusive of that. And it just speaks to the wider culture that's going on around the world with the crisis, and I will use the word crisis, of sexuality and understanding of who we are, who God created us to be. So if I have to be honest, it's hard to get this through in a way that is understandable, because when we talk about alternative genders, it can be confusing. I'm a therapist, and it still confuses me sometimes, and you'll read a lot of the research, and it's hard to follow, I'll be honest, it really is. And so I still grapple with it and try to figure out, what is this even saying? So I kind of want you to know the main point of this talk, and this is my point I want to drive very clear to you so there's no confusion. The reason we, as Catholics, as Christians, reject this concept, so we reject it, we don't believe in it, this concept of socially constructed gender, is because the Creator, God, gave us our sexuality. It's God-given. And when we reject that sexuality, we are actually attacking the character of the Creator, who is perfect and exists in perfect love. So we might not even mean to, but we're basically claiming that God made some kind of mistake when He made us. That we actually have complete and total power over ourselves. But did any of us create ourselves? No. So we don't. We don't have complete power because we did not create ourselves. So I'm going to give you guys some real life stories to kind of help you understand, because I think the biggest thing with this issue is to understand that God loves people. He loves all people, always. So I want to start with a story. When I was 21 years old and a junior at the University of Arizona, go Wildcats, I majored in religious studies along with family studies and human development. In my family studies courses, I was exposed to every main theory on gender. One day in my adolescent development class, my professor invited a group of transgender people to speak on their experiences. I was intrigued and I listened intently. And as I listened, I wanted to cry because I just sensed these people were confused. I'm not saying this from a place of superiority or judgment, but the pain and confusion in their voices went straight to my heart, and I was moved with deep compassion and love. I wanted so bad to go up to these individuals after the lecture was over and tell them that God loved them and was waiting for them, as they talked to our entire class about how toxic Christianity in general and Catholicism in particular was to their ideology. I was not mad. I was not even offended by them. I was so upset, because I wish these individuals could have found a way to heal their pain. I knew they were finding they were seeking a way to find their identity from something other than God, and that's why they seemed so upset. But I think we all do that. I know I do. I sure do. I think that I can create my identity and find ways to justify it. As I get older and have failed many times with this, I'm very interested in who God says I am and what He created me for. Because since I did not create myself, I cannot fully tell you my purpose. I must look to my Creator for that. So, I don't need to tell you that there's a lot of political discussion that goes into gender, and I want to totally stay away from that, not because I'm afraid of politics, but political parties rarely change hearts and minds. So I could make this all about what the church teaches versus what culture says, but I wanted to take a different approach. But plain and simple, the church teaches that you don't get to choose if you are a male or a female. And at the most basic level, that is true. You don't get to choose. God gives it to you. And you are created male and female. The Creator chooses who you are, and his ways are perfect. So you can be certain he never will and never has made a mistake. I want to come from the truth found in the scriptures and what we as Christians have believed since the beginning. And that is we are created by love, for love. And that is God's grand design. He created us male and female and chose that for us. We can often be confused about who we are in this world and who we are attracted to. Quite frankly, that can be a normal part of development and growing up. However, God is never, ever confused about who we are. And he simply does not create us for this kind of confusion. People might call you hateful or some form of phobic for this belief that we are actually created with a specific, unchangeable gender. But having a differing view from the rest of society is not phobic. It's a mark of deep thought and consideration for God's plan. I simply agree with what God says about the human person. He says that I'm a woman, even if I do not always like being a woman. That is who I am. I cannot change who he created me to be. So, I don't know about you guys, but I have a deep love for our Pope Francis. I love him. One of my dreams is to meet him, and I just give him a great big hug, and I never let go. He's wonderful. And so I love to see what our Pope has to say about these things. And so he gave a quote a while back, and he said this. He connected gender theory with the exploitation of human beings and of the natural world. He suggested that both came from a lack of appreciation of humankind's God-given dignity. And this is what the Pope said. It's a global problem, the exploitation of creation and the exploitation of people. We are living at a time when humankind as the image of God is being annihilated, the Pope said. He said that this exploitation led to wars, to poverty, and so in turn to the refugee crisis. In his encyclical, Laudato Si', the Pope similarly connected economic exploitation with gender theory. He criticized the desire to cancel out sexual difference, saying, thinking that we enjoy absolute power over our own bodies turns often subtly into thinking that we enjoy absolute power over creation. Now that we have addressed that, I want to ask you guys about your name. Have you ever thought about it before? Where it comes from? Okay. I'd like you to turn to the person near you and tell them your name. Okay, cool. So we all have a name. So now I want to ask you guys a question just to think about. Do you know why you were given your name? Raise your hand if you know why you were given your name. Okay, great. Some of you are going to need to ask. You're going to need to ask why you got that name. It's an important thing to know. Okay. Does anybody have any nicknames? Raise your hand if you have nicknames. Okay, I have like 40 nicknames, but I'm not going to share them with you because they're super embarrassing. But I am going to share this with you guys, if you're ready for this. So my name is Danielle Burr, but my middle name is LaRue. My parents are Dan and Barbara Burr, and my name is Danielle because my parents had a baby boy before I was born, and they named him Daniel, so the boy version of my name. His name was Daniel, but he died, and I never met him. So the following year, when I was born, my parents named me Danielle. So Danielle is the French female version of the male name Daniel, meaning God is my judge. And I love that my name means that. It's really cool. And it means God is my judge in the Hebrew. So the name appears in the Bible. You might see it in, you hear the story about Daniel surviving a night in a den of lions. And lions happen to be my favorite animal. Just so strange how that works. My middle name, LaRue, it's not my favorite. I was given that middle name because my paternal grandmother wanted one of the grandkids to be named after her grandma, who had the last name LaRue. So I didn't get to choose it, and quite frankly, I sometimes wish I did. But it's mine, and it was given to me, and I own it. I'm Danielle LaRue Burr. I have an amazing younger sister. My sister is basically the most athletic and gifted human being I know. She just ran a marathon last weekend while I was taking a nap, so we're different in that respect. My sister was born super early, super premature in the hospital, and she weighed about 1 pound. Her survival was a miracle, and her name is very unique. My sister's full name is Daily Sue Burr. Her name is Daily, as in give us this day our daily bread. Only it's spelled Daylee. So, growing up, my sister and I, we love gift shops. I don't know if any of you were like fans of gift shops. You know, you go to SeaWorld or Disneyland, and you'd be like, can we stop in the gift shop? So anytime we would go to a place that had gifts, we would look for those already made name keychains. Do you guys know what those are? You like find them, and you're like, oh, I wonder if my name. But I guess the new thing is the Cokes that have your name on them. So that's like the new thing. But so anytime we would look for the already made keychains, and I'd always find mine, but my sister was really sad because she never ever found her name on a keychain. And you know, you can get those ones where you write in your name, but it's kind of hurtful. It's like, oh, well, they're not even thinking of me. So my mom would like try to make it better and be like, that's because your sister is so special and she has such a special name. And you know, we'd just smile at my mom. Whatever you say, Mom. So as we've grown up, my sister and I, we drink a lot of coffee. Do we have any coffee drinkers in the room? Okay. So I just want to tell you guys this. I probably shouldn't be admitting this, but I'm just going to own it. I know you're not really supposed to bring drinks in here, but I tried to sneak my coffee in, and it spilled in my purse. So joke's on me, right? Should have followed the rules. But anyways, I was like, oh, I'm going to be all sneaky, and then it backfired. So I guess that was like a natural consequence to my action of trying to be sneaky. So me and my sister, we love coffee, as do many of you. So I noticed when we were in college that when my sister would go to order her coffee, they would ask her, what's your name? You know, like they write their name on the coffee. And she would say, Danielle. And the first time I just laughed at her. And I told the barista, I was like, yeah, put me under Danielle too. But I looked at my sister, and when I asked about it, I jokingly said, oh, I see you love me so much. You actually want to be me. And she just rolled her eyes and was like, no. It's just so annoying to have the barista ask me my name and why I have it, because they always get it wrong. Like the other day, they thought her name was Daisy. They think she's Bailey. So she just doesn't like to use her name. She uses my name. So if you think I'm kidding, I do have some real life photos of all the times she's gone to a coffee place and they write Danielle on her cup. And I was gonna bring them with me, but if you wanna see after, I have full evidence. Like this has happened 20 times at least. So I love that I actually have the photos we take of our coffee, and that's kind of, don't judge me for it, because the Starbucks cup makes her look super basic. But I make my coffee at home, so that's my sister, and I go to Dutch Bros over Starbucks. So we're just gonna put that out there, okay? The coffee that spilled in my purse was Dutch Bros, okay? And so this is a funny story, and if my sister and I go to our favorite coffee shop, we like to go to Lux on Central, she will most likely tell the barista that her name is Danielle. And she does it right in front of me. I just look at her and I'll laugh at her. But this whole story, it has a point. It points to something deeper. My sister is a unique person created by God. He knew she would be born very small and she would overcome a lot and become an amazing athlete and grow in her faith and come to love him more. My sister and I, while related, we are related, we look alike, we sound alike, we both have the Minnie Mouse voice going on, so that's good for us. But we are so different. She runs a marathon for fun and I take a marathon nap for fun. My sister works out and I pig out, in and out, double, anyone? Regardless of how many times she tells the barista her name is Danielle, she will never be me. She will never be me and I will never be her. We simply cannot change that, even if she fools the barista. So I want to connect that story to the fact that regardless of if I change my name or have nicknames, my parents gave me my name, and it's a reflection of them, even if I change it. My original name is how my parents intended to know me. On a deeper level, my sister can pretend she has my name, but we all know that is not the person she was created to be. You see, my sister is a unique woman created by God, and she'll never get rid of that. Even if my sister were to legally change her name, I have known her since she was born, and she was born Daly Sue Burr, the name given to her by my parents. And she could never actually be a boy, be a man, even if one day she told me she was. It would not be in line with actual reality. The same goes for who you are, female or male. I sometimes get super frustrated because being a woman can be really hard. It can be hard. We go through a lot, and it can sometimes be a confusing journey. And sometimes people like to label us. Do you guys ever feel labeled? Yeah, labeled, yeah. So I feel labeled all the time. And we take those labels to heart. Do some of you take it to heart? It can really hurt your feelings. Yeah. So when I was in high school about 10 years ago, I never went on a date in high school. Never went out with a guy, never went on a date, just stayed home. When I went to dances, I would go with my friends. So if you're one of those, that's totally fine. I was you. But I would say I can't go on a date because I'm not ready for it, and dealing with guys totally stressed me out. So I just didn't do it. I just focused on Jesus, my main man. And because of this, because I just decided not to go on dates, which is totally fine, that's totally fine, I would hear people say strange things such as, there must be something wrong with her if she never went out on a date. They were kind of getting at something, if you catch my drift, she doesn't really seem interested in guys. I wonder what's wrong with her. So we do that to people all the time, and it's totally wrong, right? Totally wrong. So it made me feel so self-conscious. I can't even tell you. So self-conscious. So people could say what they wanted, but even if they said all that stuff, it didn't change who I was in God's eyes. It didn't matter what they said. God knew who I was and who he created me to be. So I think in this day and age, we're all so focused on sex and relationships that it becomes the core of our identity. I would never once introduce myself as, hello, my name is Danielle, and I'm a heterosexual female, and I'm attracted to men. That would be really weird, right? You'd be like, okay, that's interesting. But so often, we do that to other people. Well, that person, I think they might be gay. I think they might have something going on with them, if you catch my drift. Blah, 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 blah. Do we ever ask for that person's name? Do we ever stop to think they are infinitely more than what sex they are attracted to? No, we often just stop there. Can I tell you something? We will not always understand the journey and inner pain of other people, but we always can behave like Jesus to them and welcome them into God's love and grace. If you think about it, the person who is hurting, confused, and searching, as I scroll down, they need love and support and someone to listen to them more than anyone. If you are questioning who you are, and I always suspect there's a lot of us questioning who we are because we're in that time of development where we're growing and learning things, that's normal. It's normal to question who you are and ask questions about where you're going, what your wants in life, where does God fit in? And we need to ask who we are. That draws us closer to God. But if you become confused about your sexuality or who you are, just know this, and I want to be clear on this. God is never confused about who you are. He has never been confused. He will never be confused about who you are and who he created you to be. Never, ever, ever. I promise you that. So, true story. I promise. Stake my life on it. So, that offers me a lot of comfort when I have like all these questions about who I am, because you should know that you're more than any pain or confusion that you have. And when you have this pain or confusion, you should go to people who you know will love you and be with you. You belong in this church, and we'd never want to lose you. Never want to lose you. And I think so many people leave because they feel like, I'll go elsewhere. But where are you gonna go? Where? We have Jesus. Where are you gonna go? You have to stay here. And life is hard, and the best place to bring your confusion and struggle is to the heart of God and this church, but maybe you felt like you couldn't. As a youth minister, therapist, and disciple of Jesus, I will say this: God simply cannot stop loving you. He is love, and he created you for love, out of love. Love is the best, but it comes at a price, and you will have to fight for true, genuine, Christ-like love. And because that is often so hard to find in a broken world, you will be tempted to settle for lesser loves. I have been tempted so many times and failed at this so many times. I'm ashamed at the places where I have sought love, but I'm more grateful to God for continuing to give me the strength for fight for his pure and best love. I don't want to be mediocre. None of us do. So we must press on and fight and come to the Lord when we mess up. Come to him when you mess up. You're going to mess up. Go to him. It would be my dream to talk to each one of you individually, to hear your story and deep pains and struggles. But here we are in a massive group, so I just want each and every one of you to listen up right now. Okay? If you weren't listening, listen now, okay? My friends over there, listen. Okay. God does not care what you have done, what you are struggling with, what shame you carry, what you have told yourself, what you think you are worthy of. The creator of the universe, who exists in pure and perfect love, created you out of love, and he will never leave you. He will always be waiting for you, and he will always show you what you're meant for. Along the way, you need strong and wise adults who can help and support you, who you can ask about all this confusing stuff, and who you can know will love you no matter what. I love Jesus Christ with all that I am. He is my absolute everything. He is my hope. I'm also a very flawed human being. I make serious mistakes and sins and have not always honored my sexual dignity the way I should. But I know that Jesus is patient and oh so kind. He's so kind. He walks with me and doesn't constantly remind me of how I have failed. He instead shows me a better way. I see so many explanations for all these gender issues and the sexuality crisis we find ourselves in. It confuses me. And I can predict that we all are only going to be more confused as more terms are introduced to us. So be prepared. We're probably going to get more confused. However, the cure for this whole crisis of identity already exists and has existed forever. He has a name, Jesus Christ. My dear friends, go meet him. It will be a bumpy road, but he will tell you who you are, and he will show you what you are worth. He is in love with you, and oh, to be in love with him. He changes what you desire and want. He makes you strive for the very best found in his word, and he heals you of your confusion. What is the X in the Latin X? That's still being adjusted and developed, as many things in our society are. But ask me, who is the Savior of the world? And I tell you, his name is Jesus Christ. He never changes, but he changes everything. So, let us live that we will never be confused or accused, rather, of hate or indifference, but let us also know that compromising the truth is a serious blunder and ends up celebrating that which is not in the will of our Father. This is a painful tension for us as Catholics to live with. To be seen as rejecting a belief or a behavior is not the same as rejecting a person. Keep that in mind. But God helps us carry that burden because we know that it is absolutely sinful to reject any human being. The reason we reject the concept of socially constructed genders is because the Creator gave us our sexuality. And when we reject that sexuality, we're actually attacking the character of the Creator, who is perfect and exists in perfect love. We are claiming, even if we do not realize it, that God made some kind of mistake when he made us, and that we actually have complete and total power over ourselves, even though we did not create ourselves. Go find your Creator. Trust him. Listen to him. Read his word found in the Holy Bible. He will never, ever make a mistake. And when he made you, he saw it, and he said, it was very good, very good. So as you go back into the world and meet your family, friends, and even yourself, people who have real pain and issues surrounding gender and human sexuality, I want to give you a couple practical pieces to help you. If someone is to come to you and shares that, you can always affirm that they were created by God and God loves them. He certainly does. Invite that person into the church where they belong and can work through their pain and heartfelt questions. We don't want to lose them. And a lot of times people struggle with where they belong at the church. They need to be in the church. They need to be in God's word and God's truth. Number 3, and this is crucial. Jesus never once destroyed a person. He never destroyed a person. He always treated them with dignity and respect, but he did know that certain behaviors were not in line with his Father's plan. And he didn't affirm those behaviors. He didn't say they were okay, but he never tore down a person. And I think this will help us, number 4. I think we like to classify everybody's sin and tell everyone what they're guilty of. But sexual sin, even if it's done by a man and a woman or 2 men and 2 women, is sin. Sexual sin is sin. So we all have to focus on keeping ourselves pure and in line with God. So focus on making yourself better and living in line with God's plan and truth. That'll change the world. That will be the example. And if you have nowhere to go, this is my number 5, go to Jesus. I cannot stress this enough. I know of no other way for goodness and healing, and he does heal. And 6, just putting it out there, I would be willing to speak with any of you who are struggling. I am the youth minister at St. Francis Xavier in Phoenix. You guys are always welcome to visit or be a part of our life team group there. This stuff is really hard, and let's not be afraid to talk about it and get healing. And find someone at your church, a priest, a sister, someone you really look up to that can help you through this, because loneliness, no good. And 7, I want God's best for each of you, and that requires a lot of fighting and wrestling. It doesn't come easy. Never be afraid to wrestle with God. All the great saints did. And you will find he speaks to you in your questions, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. Go to him for everything. There is nothing you can't take to him. Thank you so much.